Hello, Algebra. This is Mrs. C. Today we're going to be talking about the area method. There are 3 boxes and 1 extension that I'm going to go through. And first off, we're going to start off with how to read area tiles. And we're going to be utilizing these 3 basic shapes to work on multiplying binomials. So we have this shape here, which is a 1 by 1. So what we're asking is for the area inside. So 1 times 1 will give you an area of 1. For this shape here, we have the length, which is represented by the variable x, times 1. And this area inside, an x times 1 is x, so this has an area of x. And finally, the final shape is an x by x. So the area of this shape is an x squared. We're going to use these shapes to help us multiply binomials. So here we have an example. We have x plus 2 times x plus 1. So if I utilize the shapes that we were working with, and I have an x and 2 units of 1 by 1, which gives us an area of 1, and this has an area of x. This represents x plus 2. So up here, I'm going to do x and then a unit of 1, which represents the x plus 1. And we're going to multiply these together, length times width. So if I multiply x times x, it's going to give me the shape x squared. X times 1 is x. Then we move on to 1 times x is x. 1 times 1 is 1. And the same goes here. 1 times x is x. And 1 times 1 is 1. So I have x squared plus 1, 2, 3 x's and 2 units plus 2. So the next section is a U-try. So why don't you take a look at this and utilize the area method to find a solution. What we're going to start with is setting up our units. So we have x and then 3 units, which represents this x plus 3, x and 3. And we need x and 2 units. And we're going to multiply the length and the width. So x times x is x squared. X times 1 is x. X times 1 is x. Moving on. 1 times x is x, and 1 and 1. Same here, 1 times x is x, and 1 and 1. And lastly, 1 times x is x with 1 and 1. So what we have is x squared plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x's and 6 units. So lastly, let's take a look at this extension. So if you look at this, what do you see that's different from our prior 2 examples? Hopefully you can take a look and see that we have a -2. We didn't have a negative value in our previous examples. We can still utilize the area method. So let's place an x, 2 units here. But in order for us to distinguish that this represents negative units, we'll fill it in so that we know that these 2 units are negative. Next, let's put our x plus 3. So here's our x, and then our 3 units. And let's multiply these together. So x times x is x squared, just like the prior examples. X times 1 is x. X times 1 is x. And x times 1 is x. Now we have negative 1 times x. So it's going to be x, but we know that a negative times a positive is a negative. So we'll color this in to know that it's a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. So these 3 units will also be negative. We have the same negative times positive. So this will be an x, but it will be a negative x. And negative times these positive 3 units will be 3 units, but the units will be negative. So I do have an x squared. But when I look at this x and this x, well, a negative x plus a positive x, well, that's going to cancel out. So those two are gone. I have a negative x and a positive x. So those will also cancel each other out. So those are gone. So what I have left is one positive x and 6 units, but all 6 units are negative. Well, we will discuss more of this when I see you in class.